Have you ever found that what initially seemed a minor oversight had detrimental consequences? This experience befell me. I had no idea it would unfold in such a manner. The essence of trust is indispensable for any relationship, and while it takes considerable effort to foster it, scant effort can shatter it. Regrettably, I was the one who breached this trust, an act I deeply regret to this day. At present, I am a 36-year-old woman married to my husband, a 40-year-old man. We have been wed for 2 years. My spouse is a distinguished professor at our local university where we both work. I, too, am an assistant professor in the same institution, having joined 3 years ago, drawn by the generous salary and reduced work hours compared to my former workplace. My husband enjoys high regard as a senior professor within this university. We crossed paths when I was recruited as his assistant, during which he was present at my interviews. Upon first meeting him, I found myself smitten by his intelligence and charm. Thrilled upon being employed as his assistant, I found ourselves often working side by side due to our job requirements. After hours, we would correct test papers together. This collaboration proved beneficial for both of us. We spent considerable time together outside work, socializing frequently. Over time, our outings transformed into dates. Our bond initially developed through light-hearted conversations and shared jokes. Gradually, we began eating lunch together and spending increasingly more time together. The mutual attraction was evident, and it wasn't long before we entered a relationship. After a year, he proposed marriage, an offer I gladly accepted in a small ceremony. Our married life progressed smoothly as I moved into his bungalow. He was highly respected at the college and carried himself with authority. These qualities were among the factors that won my heart. I appreciated his tender care towards me. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. We were content together, living a fulfilling life. We collaborated at work and then shared the same home. I was blissfully satisfied in my marriage, feeling as if I had obtained all that I ever desired. My spouse embodied the ideal alpha male, strong, self-assured, and captivating. He was intelligent and hardworking, which I admired greatly. It seemed we were a harmonious pair, but tragedy struck just a year into our union. A seemingly inconsequential mistake led to my downfall. This error, trivial as it seemed at the time, brought about consequences beyond my wildest imaginations. I can't help but long to correct that error. The ordeal began with a new assistant professor who had recently joined our university. Let's call him George. Similar in age to me, George was charismatic, confident, and admittedly attractive. Although we had exchanged casual conversations before, there was nothing extraordinary about it. One day, while working from a university near cafe and absent of my husband, I encountered George unexpectedly. We both opted for coffee and engaged in a lively conversation covering various topics, including work and personal matters. George was newly settled in town and single, making our interaction effortless. Hours slipped away without notice. Exchanging contact details and vowing to stay connected seemed innocuous then. I hadn't foreseen that this seemingly trivial action with George would set off a chain of incidents disrupting my life significantly. In the subsequent weeks, our text exchanges ensued, initially casual discussions about work and shared interests, but they evolved into more flirtatious banter, leaving me in disbelief. I was confident that everyone recognized my marital status and knew my spouse. However, George persistently sent me covertly flirtatious text messages. While I could have chosen to disregard his advances, I didn't. Instead, I reciprocated in a similarly flirty manner. I acknowledged the inappropriateness of my actions, yet found myself unable to resist. I would only communicate with him when my husband was absent, as I feared he might discover our secret exchanges. My interactions with George were meant to be harmless and light-hearted. I didn't believe that I was committing a serious offense. A major argument ensued between my husband and me one day. He desired a baby, whereas I expressed my unwillingness at the present moment. This topic had been previously discussed, and I had made it clear that I wasn't ready for a child. The responsibilities associated with parenthood seemed daunting to me. I attempted to clarify my stance to my husband, but his anger prevented him from listening. He hurled painful remarks at me. He suggested I avoid duties is inherent in my character, which left me distressed and sorrowful. He departed the house for personal space, leaving me alone. A dispute left me feeling melancholic and exposed. It was then George reached out, proposing a drink. Initially hesitant, I succumbed to temptation and agreed to meet him. My spouse required solitude from me. Thus, my taking some distance as well was acceptable. Reflecting on this, I texted George I'd join him that evening. We headed to a bar distant from the university, situated on the town's outskirts, making it unlikely for anyone to recognize me there. The ambience was captivating, with dim lights and soft music creating an ideal setting for an enjoyable night. However, events started spiraling out of control, resulting in my excessive drinking that evening. I indulged in several shots of vodka. During the night, George stood by my side, our flirtatious banter persisting. It seemed as though we were the only two individuals in existence, isolating me from the tension of my marriage. My altercation with my spouse slipped my mind. The connection between George and I was unavoidable and unlike anything experienced before. As night turned to day, I'd crossed a line I betrayed my husband. Upon leaving, George waited by the curb for my taxi. We stood there, waiting on the sidewalk when he kissed me. He afforded me the opportunity to retreat, yet I did not. I reciprocated the kiss. So intoxicated, I failed to register what was occurring until daybreak. Upon waking with a vicious hangover, it took some time for my actions of the previous night to surface in my consciousness. My kiss shared with George resurfaced, and my first thought was one of regret. Oh fuck, what have I done? I ventured into the kitchen to find my husband at the counter. He exhibited a surprising calmness compared to his demeanor from the day prior. He inquired about my whereabouts the prior night, and I disclosed that I was out with friends. He acknowledged it and apologized for our argument from yesterday. He mentioned his intentions to give me all the time I need, with no rush regarding having a baby. However, he expressed his eagerness to expand our family. This revelation instantly filled me with guilt due to my actions the previous night. I had kissed another man while my husband harbored dreams of growing our family. Although it was only a kiss, it was still a significant mistake that I deeply regretted. Yet, there was no reversing the situation now. I knew I'd made a grave error in judgment, and the regret overwhelmed me. I wrestled with the desire to confess my actions to my husband, but feared his reaction. I was anxious about him discovering my mistake and leaving me. I understood him. He wasn't the type who would let such incidents go unpunished. In my bedroom, I found messages from George, which included queries about my safe arrival home from the previous night. Texts hinted at his enthusiasm for our kiss and desire to meet again. Instantly, I blocked him. Daily, the burden of not being truthful with my spouse gnawed at me. I adored my husband and knew that if he learned the truth, it would shatter his heart. Yet, I couldn't muster the courage to disclose the encounter between George and myself. Every night, I remained immobilized in bed, replaying the moment of my mistake. The guilt and terror were oppressive, like a tangible weight pressuring my chest. Weeks had passed since that day, yet I still lacked the audacity to inform my husband of my actions. My throat constricted every time I attempted to confess, so I opted to keep it hidden. I endeavored to maintain a semblance of normality in front of my spouse during the ensuing weeks. However, each touch from him, each kiss, left me feeling like a charlatan, as if I was betraying him. I was living a deception. I lingered in a realm of guilt and dread until George attended the seminar organized by my department, where my spouse served as the speaker. Upon seeing him, my heart sank, knowing he held our secret and could expose it if desired. Mercifully, he refrained from mentioning that fateful night or acknowledging me in any manner. He maintained his distance on campus, never hinting at remembering our months-old stolen kiss. I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for his silence regarding us. However, my guilt only intensified, gnawing like a time bomb poised to explode at any second. The cataclysmic day arrived when everything unraveled. It was a Monday morning, and I was tardy for work. An appointment with a colleague awaited me, and I was already 10 minutes late. Grabbing my bag hastily, I dashed out of the house, jumped into my car, and sped towards the university. On my drive, I discovered I'd forgotten my phone at home, causing a brief panic. However, I chose to continue my journey, aware that I would be late for my appointment, but unwilling to return and risk further delay. My husband had no engagements in the morning, planning to arrive before his afternoon meeting separately. Upon reaching the university, I hastened to my meeting, which proved fruitful, yet I couldn't shake off an uneasy feeling. As soon as it ended, I rushed to my office. Upon entering, I found my husband seated at my desk, thumbing through my messages on my phone in his hand. I stood still, knowing that the walls were closing in. My minor oversight had finally been uncovered. My husband met my gaze with a look of betrayal, making me feel like the biggest fool. He rose and returned my phone to me. "Why did you act this way?" he inquired softly, having scanned our text exchanges with George. He found the messages where we flirted, me reciprocating his advances. The kiss was also mentioned in those texts. I was speechless. I knew there was no excuse for my actions. I could only lower my head in embarrassment and await whatever consequences followed. My spouse informed me that he had sensed something amiss when I started distancing myself in recent weeks. He believed I was still troubled about the baby issue, which is why he granted me space. "I never imagined you would betray me this way," he said to me. My husband remained silent, merely exiting my office, leaving me alone with my guilt and shame. I realized that I had squandered his trust and wasn't sure if I could ever regain it. I sat at my desk for what seemed like endless hours, stunned by shock and regret. I ruined the most important thing in my life, my marriage, over a foolish kiss. After some time, I returned home to tell my spouse it was a mistake and that I truly loved him. Upon my arrival, he sat on the couch in the lounge room, sipping his whiskey. Approaching him for comfort and an explanation, he rebuffed my touch and pushed me away. His eyes were cold and indifferent, radiating anger. I recognized I had caused him great pain, and there was no way to rectify it. Desperate to divulge the truth, I explained everything, that it was only a kiss, triggered by extreme intoxication. He regarded me with such fury, but remained silent. Following my confession, he departed the house. For several days afterward, my husband barely spoke to me. It was as if I were invisible. I begged for his forgiveness, but he refused to acknowledge me. I drifted through our home, a phantom without purpose, as days morphed into weeks with my husband, and I barely communicating. The atmosphere was heavy with tension and unspoken words that loomed like a loaded weapon. I attempted to connect with him, yet he consistently moved further away, dismissing any attempts at interaction. All my efforts seemed futile. I even tried to embrace him while he slept, but he rebuffed my touch. For a period, I believed we could resolve our issues if I simply persisted in showing remorse. I thought that we could discuss what occurred and find a way to progress, but it seemed like my husband was resolute about his decisions. One day, he approached me to converse, rekindling a sliver of hope. However, all optimism dissipated when he requested that I vacate the house. He informed me he required time alone to ponder on certain matters, expressing difficulty in maintaining a clear thought process in our shared living space. Upon learning this, I was disheartened and found it difficult to accept. Despite disagreement with his choice, I did not resist. A faint hope flickered within me, contemplating that distance might prompt him to miss me and restore normalcy. Consequently, I rented a modest apartment in town and vacated our shared home. Reluctant to leave, I didn't pack all my belongings, believing I would return and resume living with him. Life in the apartment was isolating without my spouse. I spent most of my days weeping over past events or attempting to evade reality through work. Requesting remote work due to my depression, I found solace in my work until it too eluded me. One day, my department head phoned me to announce my immediate termination from work. The news left me bewildered. It seemed as if my world was unraveling, my marriage, house, and now career. Despite investing my heart and soul into my job, I found it snatched away due to a reckless error. I suspected my spouse, who had always exhibited controlling behavior, never anticipating he'd go this far. I implored the department head to reconsider, but my efforts were in vain. The head explained that my husband had phoned, pressuring them to dismiss me. He threatened to quit if they didn't remove me, and the university couldn't bear such a loss. My husband exploited his power and connections at the university to terminate me. Without employment or shelter, I felt aimless and incapable of making decisions or seeking help. The burden of guilt and embarrassment from my error still weighed heavily on my heart, and now I was compelled to confront the retribution consequences of my husband's actions. Days morphed into weeks as I battled to stay afloat financially. My savings were meager, and despite applying for jobs everywhere, none were willing to take me on. I felt like a failure in all aspects of my life. But then an unforeseen event occurred. George contacted me. He had managed to reach me since I had blocked his number on my phone. As a professor at the university where I used to work, it was easy for him to find my mail address. He informed me that he had learned about my predicament and wished to aid me. Initially, I was apprehensive. After all, he was the cause of my misfortune in the first place. With no job and a husband hostile towards me, I wondered what other hardships could befall me. Thus, I decided to meet George and see how things unfolded. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. In a neat suit and carrying an affable smile, he approached, proposing to buy coffee. At a secluded window table, I unburdened myself, divulging my marital issues, job woes, and crumbling life narrative. A sensation of ease filled me as I spoke, as if a burden was being shed from my shoulders. It was the first time I shared such confidences with anyone. George remained silent for a while before moving closer and grasping my hand. "I'm sorry," he murmured gently. It had never occurred to me how dire my situation had become. His gaze met mine, and in that moment, I felt as if I was immersed in his eyes. The warmth and compassion reflected there were a rarity in my recent experiences. Comforting indeed. "I wish to aid you," he declared. His gesture offered solace amidst the animosity from my husband, but this stranger desired to extend assistance. Despite acknowledging his kind gesture, I couldn't accept it initially due to fearing further upsetting my husband. Seeking aid from George could potentially exacerbate matters rather than resolve them. However, as days turned grim and my predicament intensified, thoughts of George's offer persistently resurfaced. With no other avenues available, his sincere intentions to assist me grew compelling. He claimed to have contacts within the academic sphere, asserting he could aid me in finding a new job. My husband refused to engage in conversations regarding my termination, leaving me in solitude. I eventually called George and confessed my change of heart, and he assisted me in securing a position at another university. This marked a ray of hope that my life was slowly regaining stability. Securing employment was the initial stride towards restoring balance. Additionally, he provided assistance with my resume and cover letter. I expressed my sincere gratitude towards him for his assistance, as we hadn't been friends long, yet this individual was doing so much for me. I believe that George was merely trying to assist due to his own guilt over the situation involving me. We didn't engage in flirtation or inappropriate behavior with each other. He genuinely aimed to help me secure employment. In my mind, I kept contemplating my husband and wishing to earn his forgiveness. Upon visiting the university to speak with him, he ignored me and told me to depart. Desperate for his forgiveness, days turned into weeks, during which I adjusted to my new job, challenging but rewarding. The work aided in building a new life for myself. My repeated attempts to contact my husband via calls or messages were unanswered. Living alone in my small apartment, George remained my only confidant. Despite finding stability at work, I was dismissed once more, raising my suspicion towards my husband. I believed it was his scheme. All my efforts were in vain, and I found myself back at the starting point. I could no longer contain my emotions, so I visited my husband's residence to confront him. I inquired about his intentions as he continued to sabotage my career. Enraged by this revelation, he accused me of infidelity with George. My husband found out from his friends that I had acquired the new job due to George, leading him to believe there was an affair between us. He expressed hate towards me and regretted ever meeting me. His anger was palpable, causing me fear. I attempted to clarify that nothing inappropriate happened between me and George. He merely helped me secure a position. However, my explanations fell on deaf ears as he refused to believe me. In desperation, I repeated the events of that night, confessing that I was heavily intoxicated with vodka. He scoffed at me, expressing disbelief over my justification for infidelity. On that particular night, I felt as though I'd lost my spouse. The frosty and distant tone in his voice made it plain he no longer wished to engage with me. I left the house with tears in my eyes, sensing this might be the last time I returned. Since then, I've unsuccessfully sought employment elsewhere. I also stopped communicating with George, as our interactions rekindled the guilt from that fateful night when I kissed him, and served as a painful reminder of the events that followed. One day, upon returning to my apartment after another job interview, I found a divorce petition waiting for me sent by my husband. The papers brought forth uncontrollable tears, marking the end of my marriage, a consequence entirely on my part. It was then that I understood a single kiss had shattered my entire world. Never did I imagine a solitary error of mine would lead to the loss of my marriage and everything else cherished. Yet, here I stand, desolate, bereft of support. Few acquaintances in town remained, as they shared ties with both myself and my spouse, unwilling to choose sides. My family, too, had relocated to another state due to my father's job transfer, leaving me isolated. The subsequent days unfolded like a protracted, agonizing nightmare. I cycled through every conceivable emotion: sorrow, anger, guilt, and despair. Eventually, I became numb, recognizing that the path forward demanded a gradual self-rebuilding. I took a deep breath, wiping away my tears. It was time to acknowledge reality and persevere. I made the decision to sign the divorce documents. I could not preserve the marriage when my husband had renounced it. He had relinquished hope in me. I didn't hold him accountable. After all, it was I who had committed infidelity. I completed the documents and journeyed to my spouse's residence to deliver them. Additionally, I needed to gather the remaining belongings stored at their home. Upon entrance, he granted me access. I handed him the papers and expressed my desire to retrieve my possessions as well. He merely nodded and cleared a path for me to reach the bedroom. Sifting through my items, I found a small note my husband had penned on our anniversary, which read, "I adore you above all else in this world. You are my life, my soulmate, and my partner in crime. Happy anniversary, my love." This message stirred more tears. What had turned sour? How did we reach this point? Where did the affection disappear to? I collected as many items as feasible and then departed his residence. I hoped he would look at me with yearning. However, there was only frostiness in his gaze. Following my return to my apartment, I chose to step away from everything and embarked on a walk. Unaware, I drifted aimlessly in thought, oblivious to a car hurtling towards me. A passerby yanked me away from danger at the last moment. This encounter jolted me. I resolved then and there to cease living as a helpless victim and seize control over my life. I left a message for my husband, urging him to expedite our divorce if he was certain of his choice. He didn't respond. However, his legal representatives contacted me, assuring a swift divorce process due to its amicable nature. They divulged the terms of the divorce settlement. My husband was obliged by law to provide a fair portion of his earnings, though I felt neither worthy nor desired it. I instructed them to convey to him that I required neither his money nor his possessions. I needed funds even more so after losing my job. Initially, I had hoped this gesture might prompt his forgiveness, yet it failed. The attorneys informed me that my effort would not affect his decision, leading us to swiftly initiate divorce proceedings. During court appearances, he ignored me and spoke only with his lawyers, a behavior that once caused me immense pain. Our divorce was finalized by the court within 3 months. Despite persistent hope, he remained resolute in moving forward. I waited for him to express uncertainty, but it never happened. Post-divorce, my husband has severed all ties with me, while I long for him daily. If only I could rewind time and correct my error, but that is merely wishful thinking. Now, I'm left to endure my life burdened by the guilt of ruining my marriage with him. Following my divorce, a friend invited me out for lunch, as it had been a long time since we last met. Despite my lack of enthusiasm, I agreed. This friend was mutual to both me and my ex-husband. She disclosed that he had begun dating again. As soon as the words left her mouth, she seemed to regret her revelation and switched the conversation topic. I was stunned by her news. I acknowledged my mistake, yet I cherished my husband deeply and hadn't even considered moving on. Yet, it seemed effortless for him. Inquiring further about him, she revealed nothing more. I am solely responsible for my predicament. If I hadn't made that rash decision, I would still be with my husband at home. The past cannot be altered, and now I am adapting to the new circumstances. It was clear I couldn't continue bumping into my ex-husband or witnessing him with another woman. Initially, I believed the most effective solution to alleviate this agony was to depart from this town. Regardless, Noon would have offered me employment here, given the recent news of my divorce. Instead, I secured a job in a neighboring town, accepting a significantly lower wage compared to my previous earnings with my husband. My presence held little significance in this town, and so I opted to relocate. Life is a struggle each day, some days more than others. The idea of accumulating savings for therapy sessions is appealing, as I hope it may aid in alleviating the burden of guilt weighing on me. I welcome your thoughts, grateful that you took the time to read my story thus far. Sharing this experience with all of you on Reddit felt liberating. Update. For those curious about my current state, thank you for expressing concern. To be truthful, I am uncertain if I am coping well or not. The weight of recent events is challenging to process, but I strive to avoid dwelling on it excessively. Each passing moment, I find myself overwhelmed by the memories of the past few months. I can only hope that things improve with time. In response to those queries about whether either my ex or I attempted contact following the divorce, I did make attempts to reach him, but he has blocked me on his phone and various social media platforms. I have also written to him expressing my apologies and hoping for a chance to speak again. However, as anticipated, there has been no response from him. A year has passed since my last update, and much has changed since then. Although I had hoped that I was making progress with moving on, I find myself still struggling. My breakdowns have lessened somewhat, but therapy sessions continue to help me cope. I have managed to keep my job. Over the past year, I have tried repeatedly to contact my former husband, but he has yet to respond. His birthday came and went without any acknowledgement from him, and our anniversary was a difficult day for me as I couldn't resist reaching out to him. He failed to respond to any of my emails, and he still had me blocked on his phone. I learned through a friend that he was dating someone. I had assumed he would have forgiven me by now and at least speak with me. Even just talking would have sufficed for me, but alas, there was nothing. I had given up all hope and was attempting to move on with my life. However, when I thought I was moving forward, I was set back 4 steps. Last month, I needed to go to the town where my husband resided for document verification purposes. I attempted to contact him via email regarding this, but he didn't reply. I considered going there myself. Perhaps a small part of me simply sought an excuse to see him again. I was quite apprehensive about meeting him after such a long time. I visited his house and rang the doorbell. I had no idea what to expect, but I certainly wasn't prepared for what I saw a young woman open the door, who was also more attractive than me. Realizing he had a new partner shortly post-divorce, I should have anticipated the situation. Yet, I wasn't prepared for the sight of her pregnant. Her growing belly was evident, approximately 5 months along. The pain was acute as I witnessed another woman bearing his child in his home. My mind raced with thoughts of how it could have been me carrying his child. We had disagreed on starting a family when we went out that night with George. The guilt washed over me as I stood there. I began to wonder if our paths wouldn't have diverged if we shared a child, a bond connecting us. I struggled to maintain my composure. Telling myself I wouldn't weep in my ex's presence amidst the pregnant woman, I introduced myself and requested his signature on a document. She acknowledged me, informing me he was away and offered to deliver the paper to him instead. I was evicted from a home that had once been mine, replaced by her. I acknowledged and provided my new address. With tears in my eyes, I departed the house and relocated to my own apartment. Since then, my emotional breakdowns have recurred, interspersed with dreams of him, accompanied by another woman and their child. Despite seeking guidance from my therapist, no relief has been found. It appears that this burden of guilt and regret will forever be a part of me. I choose to share my experience here in the hope of finding understanding without being judged. If any of you can offer advice for alleviating this pain, I am receptive to new ideas. At this juncture, I am open to trying anything.